Hi, hello, and good evening. I tried to do this video earlier today and ended up rambling for about an hour and a half, doubled the length of a song while showing off all of the things that I have learned with LMMS, and somehow managed to not press start recording at the beginning. Just to show you that I'm actually recording this time, I have a recording button right here. Because, you really need to know this. Knowing that it's now on the internet and you're watching it, you needed to see proof that I actually started the recording. So, LMMS is this really cool DAW. It's open source, which means it is free. It's cross-platform. I'm running it on Linux, but you can run it on Windows, Mac, or probably a ZX Spectrum if you happen to have one. Who cares? When you first open up LMMS, you start off with this interesting little set of tracks. A triple oscillator, which is a very simple waveformer. You can modify the change the sound of it if you want by changing the different waveforms. You can turn off one of them if you want. You can up or down the volume. You can crank these knobs all you like and make some interesting sounds. But LMMS also comes with samples that some of them come pre-built in. A good deal of these I actually downloaded from Sample Swap. Sorry, that's a free musical sample website. I downloaded the whole torrent by donating, I think it was $30 sometime last year. I've been playing with the concept of getting into music creation over the past year, mostly for the purposes of building music for original games that I'd like to build. I have been learning how to use Unity. I've been trying to get into game design for like 10 years now. I've tried libgdx on Java, Pygame, Godot, which is an open source Unity. Mostly, I wanted to build my first game, the intent being to build a randomly generated, roguelike, retraversal platform game with RPG elements, which sounds like a lot of words. Sounds like a heavy bite to chew on my first try, but I've been slowly pecking away at it and actually making decent progress over the past 2.5, 3 years. I've actually gotten pretty good at doing animation. I've gotten decent at the Unity side of things. But I want to make my own assets for everything. I want to make all the animation, all of the art, all of the music, and prove that I can do it. I mean, I know some small-time folks who have gone big. People like Toby Fox, whose real driving force has been the music in his game design. Undertale, obviously, is the one that he's the most known for. The graphics in Undertale, the actual gameplay. I mean, he himself calls it an average JRPG. I happen to think it's above average in its ability to manipulate people's emotions, and I think in no small part that's because Toby Fox is kind of an amazing music composer, and he's pretty much my inspiration for even trying any of this. Of course, I'm 42 years old, and why not pick up a new hobby? I've been working on courses that I picked up at Udemy. I started a course by Jason Allen about a year and a bit ago. I started this course, Music Theory for Electronic Music Complete, Parts 1, 2, and 3. I can't recommend this enough. It was, I believe, $15 when I picked it up on sale, but Udemy always does this thing where they jump their prices up to like 100. Don't buy then, wait for a sale when they'll be $10 or $15, and they come around pretty often and cover most of their library. Feels kind of scammy, to be honest, but it is what it is. My first composition that I created, I had already posted it on Facebook at one point. For some folks, it's not a particularly long composition. I created it roughly about the end of part 1 in this course, so I am now all the way down at part 3, section 26, using pentatonic scales, and I picked up LMMS a couple of nights ago and jammed out a new composition while I was waiting for scripts to run for a work thing. I'm going to show you what the first composition was that I had built about a year ago, and how much I've grown from there. I don't want to save anything, obviously, because this was just a thing. Windy Cave is my current composition. The old one was Pastoral Town Theme. Blah, blah, blah. Let's give it a quick listen. Oh, let's turn off that metronome first. As you can tell, I'm using different instruments here. These are all from a free sound font, SGM V201, which you can pick up. Just Google that, SGM-V201, to get the file. And it comes with a ton of instruments, all of them sampled at middle C, and then they pitch shift, so they're not as good of an instrument as something that you might get, say, something that was actually designed to be a real, like this mallets instrument, which gives you a bunch of different xylophone type percussion instruments that sound closer to the real thing, probably because they were better sampled than these guys. Now, all of that aside, I've got in this very simple composition, I've got this is all C major. C major with a very simple chord progression that is basically, let me shift that down. Whoop. That is not what I meant to do. Oh my god. Let me control shift. No, just this one. Alright, I'm just going to move it. This is a C major to start us off. And of course, it wouldn't play the C major. But in learning chord inversions, or note inversions on chords, I shifted that up so that it's the C 1 octave higher, so that everything looks visually compact, so that when you play it, it has this very lovely, sounding like it's in the middle of a range. Like that. So let's play the full song. I'm going to bump up the master volume here so you can actually hear it better. LMMS also has this neat beat bassline editor that you can throw in a few instruments, percussion instruments, and then create this sick beat loop like this. Wow, hear that shaker? Isn't that amazing? Every couple of measures, there's a shaker at the end of it. Yeah. Anyway, this is my first composition, and I'll play it for you now. Let's get that out of the way so you can see the whole thing. It's tiny, and we'll pick it apart in a second. And since it's meant to loop, I pretty much did not do any kind of outro, kept it fairly even so that it comes back around to the same sort of 2-measure quiet, without percussion, without harp. There's a sweep pad underneath it all to give it a sort of very light. It's actually really, really low velocity. Barely there, but it's there. Gives you the C, D, C, A underneath all of it. This is my chord progression on cello. This is a little melody I put together by copying the note progression from cello and then adding or removing, turning it into sort of a harmonic. Making sure that every one of these was also on a white line because this is C major. And just want to show you a really cool thing that LMMS can do. You can set your scale as major, right-click on C, mark current scale, and then you know that every single note that you click in, that is wrong. What happened here? Unmark all. I'm actually not sure. Theoretically, you mark current scale, and what it does is it will mark every note that is available to you in this scale. For some reason, it used D flat and didn't mark a D. Marked E flat, didn't mark E. So I'm clearly doing that wrong somehow. No matter, I'm still learning the ropes on this. These features that exist in LMMS apparently don't exist in big paid-for software like Fruity Loops or, I guess FL Studio they're calling it now, or Ableton Live. Those are extras that you have to get the enhanced editions for, the, I don't know, corporate edition or whatever. So open source proves its superiority in that. It is a little inferior in some of the support. However, pretty much every VST plugin that exists for Fruity Loops or Ableton Live can be imported in here. And each of these you can actually take. Let's say I wanted to change this cello into some mallets. I could do that. And now it's mallets if I play it. A little underwhelming, but it is what it is. NES synthesizer to make it sound sort of like an old Nintendo DSP chip. And that's much louder. So yeah, that was my first composition, and I started tinkering with a new one, as I said 2 nights ago. I decided to start with the idea of using this wind background noise and build it into sort of an ambient, lo-fi, chill beats to spelunk to. I'll open my song editor, and this is the version that I came up with in about, I'd say about an hour of playing while I was working on other things. The late night work was roughly 4 hours worth, and I had downtime in between when I was waiting for various scripts to run, so I was playing with this on the side. And this is what I ended up pressing to MP3 and sharing with some folks on Facebook to get their opinions. And here's what it sounded like when I left it earlier today. And where I left it, this last passage from about here to here was pretty much all just a bunch of ideas that I had to fill out the song that I wanted to get down really quickly and expand on later. I left them in for the purposes of pressing the song, just to give an idea of what I wanted it to sound like. And earlier today, I tried to record what amounted to be an hour and a half long explanation of everything that I wanted to do with this. And the outcome of this was a newer version of Windy Cave that is a little over twice as long. And I learned a few tricks doing it on the way. Plus, on top of that, I have some more ideas that I'd like to expand on. As I was going through the song, I made several tweaks. I didn't like how the glockenspiel had the extra notes in it that I had put in to try to fill out these moments. I didn't like the way that the sound dropped off here just by removing the entire crystal chunk. So I copied it over and changed the note velocity downward so that it kind of drifts down. And I, at one point, pointed out that one of my ideas was to take a whole nother chord progression, different from this that I had made the first time through. That was a completely different chord progression. When I first started tinkering with this song, I didn't have really any good ideas for what I wanted, aside from I wanted wind in the background, and I wanted some ambient noise and some cycling up and down to sound like sometimes it was being drowned out. So I looked around to find a resource where, this is ledgernote.com/ I'll link it, where you could see what people thought of about certain musical keys. These are obviously all subjective. You're not going to feel innocently sad or lovesick every time you hear a song in C minor. As a matter of fact, there are some real bops in C minor that you can get. You can evoke a lot of different emotions. Feminine. D minor is feminine. Sure. But I looked for something that was interesting. Discontent and uneasiness. I decided to try that, G minor. And in looking around for good ways to build chord progressions, I've looked at the rules of fifths, or the circle of fifths, and I've seen charts that let you jump from one chord to another. But I found this neat little auto chords site that gives you a chance to pick a key, pick a name, and these names are actually just sets of chord progression. And what it spat out for me for G minor was a G minor, E flat, C minor, D minor. And it sounds like this. Which is pretty close to what I had. Thing is, while I was playing around with the chords, even though I've decided that this is all in the key of C minor, while I was playing around with these chords, the E didn't sound right as an E flat. So back here in LMMS, I've got this. Here. Nope. This guy. It's just a plain old E, and it's chromatic. And here, for some reason, it's got the scale still marked from what I tried to mark before. I'm going to unmark it all. Try to mark current scale. It's minor. And that should put everything, and it actually worked properly this time. That puts everything in G that is in G minor. So you got a G, you got a you got B flat, C, D, E flat, all the highlighted lines. But I decided I didn't like this here, I moved it up one. So where it would have sounded like this before, I thought it was maybe a little too creepy, so I moved it up. Now it's like this. And I just liked it better. It gave more of a rounded feeling to the chord progression, which means that because that's chromatic, some of the notes that I'm playing over top of it are actually kind of out of key for this chord, but it doesn't matter. It sounds good. It doesn't sound bad, and that's the real thing that matters overall. As long as it doesn't sound weird, it doesn't sound bad, you've produced good music. At least that's what my mom told me. No, I mean, at least that's what my instructor in that course has suggested multiple times. I figured out also how to label things. Like this beat bass line, this block for the beat bass line is labeled chorus footsteps, and same back here, because this is basically the chorus, these 4 measures, and I copied it again down at the end, but I chopped off some of the sounds so that it came back in when it loops back to just the wind and the glockenspiel that starts us off. As you notice, there are 3 bass lines in here now. Each uses the same set of instruments: a kicker, finger snaps, and footsteps. And this is a neat little beat. And this is a completely different. Using the same instruments, you can build different bass lines, and you can have them layered on top of each other, like I do here. So both of them play, and it kind of gives this dee 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 sound. I could just play it, I suppose. Yeah. So after all of that meddling and live dinking around with it for everybody's consumption, I came up with a song that was almost twice as long, and I'm going to play it for you now. And I think this is pretty much going to be the end of the video, because I, at this point, don't want to get too much longer than this. It was a lot of wasted effort the first time, and if I screw it up somehow again this time, I don't want to have to try again. So let's play the whole song and see how it sounds now. So, there's a bunch of changes in here that I hope you noticed. There's a whole key change here on this guy. This is now not the same chord progression that I had used before, plus 2 whole bars for this, or 2 whole measures for that middle chord. And I picked up that set of chords from the progressions here on auto chords, which I have to say, being a newbie, I absolutely love. The original chord progression sounds like this. And if you don't know what's in each of these chords, it tells you. And so this chord progression is 1, 6, 4, 5. And you can see that by over here, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in the Nashville notation. I decided to take an alternate. I went with this one. But that wasn't what I put in, was it? I did D minor, B flat, pulled the B flat into the second measure, and then continued on with the A minor. So it was, which is more like what we heard in that weird break. I also did something that I thought was interesting here, whereas before the crystal had always been like, I don't know, come back. It's not the crystal at all. You're not playing that. Play this. There we go. I decided, right before we switched keys, to give sort of a foretelling of what's about to happen. Which I thought was an interesting way to bring us into a quieter, weirder spot. Just to keep the interest going, because it's likely to play for 10, 15 minutes, and you don't want it to sound too awful when we play through the loop. I also have this little chunk over here that is just more ideas that I want to play with later. Mostly moving certain chord progressions and certain chunks of input from one instrument to another to see how they sound together. Altogether, it's going to sound okay if I just play this, but not great. Each of these ideas is basically just one measure worth of idea, and playing them all together, it's going to be, let's try it. Nope, that's not even going to play there because I've got magnetic loop points turned on. So let's play this. Interesting point. Really, this is only one measure of new ideas that I haven't actually integrated in the song, because this idea, so to speak, was just my new chord progression. So I'm going to delete that so I don't, next time I pick this up and start playing with it, decide to add some more to the song. I probably want it to be around 5 or 6 minutes. I have some more thoughts that could drag it out all the way to 8 or 9, but I think this is going to be okay as it is. Make sure that I save my changes, and that's a tour of LMMS in a nutshell. I went through topics and concepts a hell of a lot faster now than I did before. If there's actually interest, I could go through how to build these things in LMMS in more depth next time around, if there's actually an interest in this video. Well, we'll see. Let's stop recording, chop off the bits that I really don't want you to have to hear, and then I'll put it on YouTube and Facebook.